Hi, it's Xavier. Welcome to my bonsai retreat. And look, I've got loads of junipers and pines that are desperately in need of styling, wiring, repotting. But you know what? I think what you really want to see right now are some good old-fashioned Japanese maples. Especially some of the Japanese maples I've got, like this beautiful forest planting with all those red leaves ready to come off. And what does that mean when you see the leaves coming off?
It may die. It won't die.
You're going to need to hang around to find the answer to that one. So if you want to see some lovely maple pruning, some great autumn colours, because not everything is ready to fall, and keep watching. If it's going to be anything at all, it's going to be picturesque. I like that word, picturesque. Let's get on with it. These are showing all the earmarks of being ready to do that final autumnal prune. The leaves are now browned off, and those leaves just come off easily to the touch. And this is a sign that this can now be pruned. I don't need to pull heavily, and some of the leaves will stick there a bit.
Ouch, ouch,
Truthfully,
ouch, ouch.
you can just pull them all off. And that tells me that this is certainly now ready for me to do some autumnal pruning. Another maple here. The leaves are just easily coming off, and I'm not applying very much pressure. One thing I'd say to you straight away is so don't pull the leaves off. They don't pull off. Wait another couple of weeks, you'll be pruning it then. Here on the railway bed, again, we've got trees in various stages of entering the autumnal stages. Again, we can see the reds of the maples. In fact, looking closer at one that I don't think you've seen yet. This one here was originally cascaded, and I had it on its side like this. Looked ridiculous, so I put it back upright. It's been in this pond basket for a year. Leaves, and when you're pulling them off, you can just, well, if they don't pull off, you know what you do? You don't be in a hurry. You say, okay, I'll wait, do that one another week or two. And right now, what we've seen is the maples are all dropping leaves, like this one, very, very early. So, hey, spread the load. Do a few at a time. In my case, I've got this one here, this too. In fact, let's go and get this pruned, shall we? Okay, well, I've actually brought this one from the bottom of the garden, mainly because I just want to give it a spin so you can actually see it with the proper background. And you may be wondering why I've got this here. That's so I don't forget to tell you, all of these deciduous trees, once the leaves have dropped, will get dosed in a winter tree wash, or you can use neem oil. There's a whole load of products. I certainly don't recommend any one in particular. I use this. It's an organic, safe for the environment mix. Make it up in a solution that it says on the back, and spray it on all these once the foliage is off. So don't forget winter wash. And if you need to know more about autumnal tasks for the October-November, then make sure you look at my seasonal guides in the description, but there's a link to the playlist there. But yeah, I just thought I'd give this a spin. It's made such a massive difference now that I've got it actually upright and informal than what I originally had. It's a very, very interesting maple, and trying to decide the front, well, it'll be interesting. But again, we just double check. Those leaves aren't quite dropping, and there's still some freshness about them. They're not crisping, and that tells me one thing: these are still operating. They're still actually drawing in energy from what sunlight we still get. So don't be in a hurry to remove them. Look at them, keep them. Perhaps put it somewhere near your bench, because you know you're going to be getting to it soon. Definitely, when those leaves start dropping, rule of 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and you can safely prune it all back to the buds that you want. But I did want to show you the one that is worth pruning, and that's this one. This one actually typifies. You well know that back in 2014 I bought 120 one-year-old little seedlings, and they were little wee whippets, and they got treated in all sorts of different ways. Not necessarily the best way, but for a hobbyist, fine. Because what we've now got is trees now here that are 10 years old, still no thicker than a pencil, but I've got lots and lots of taper that's happened over pruning year by year. And definitely with my maples, that's how I've treated these. Got them in the pond baskets. Well, I actually want to see if it makes any great difference to their growth habits, because I did have them in little marmite pots, and in fact there's a video just up there that shows me when I make the decision to actually take them out of those little marmade pots and put them into something bigger so I can fertilise them, actually try and grow them into bigger and better. And the pruning is dead simple. You are literally going to go back to the buds that you want, and ideally the furthest bud point back in that new branch that you can find. Let's go in and have a look. The easiest decisions to make, we're right up here at the apex now. This is the top of the tree. This is where this distance, this internodal distance, which everyone goes on about, should be the smallest and the shortest. This should be the top of the tree, most ramified or looking the prettiest and refined, whatever. Instead, what we've got right at the top, we've got great big internodes here, bigger and bigger. Do you know what? We can make some big decisions, because what will happen next year is all the growth is going to come from these higher tips up here, right at the top of the tree. We don't want those growing. We actually want something right back here growing, or ideally right back here. So the first thing you can do on anything like this is just go and just cut back initially to all the low points before you're ready to think any further. Now once we've cut back to here, we can actually start appreciating what it is we're trying to develop. Now, if I want this to be a much bigger tree, do you know what I have to do? I have to put it in a growing bed. And guess what? Little spoiler. I started an experiment last spring where I put a lot of trees back into growing beds with a few comparators to see just what a difference it makes. So that's a good reason for you to hit the bell notifications. Somewhere, it's probably there just underneath my shoulder blade. But that won't be till spring 2025. So you've got time to think about it. Anyway, if I want this to grow and to some bigger tree, there's a real option I can take straight away. If I'm looking to develop or thicken the trunk, put it back into development, then basically all this ramification branches is absolutely useless. So we get rid of it. So if I was going to, I might decide actually my new tree line, follow up there, I get a little bit of taper here, movement up there, what I might actually do is cut this entire branch off there.
Please don't.
And remove all of that. I'd remove most of these, probably remove that one, remove this one here, and then have that single trunk growing up there to the sky. Now, I know, a lot of you are saying, hey, that's a great tree as it is, keep growing it as is. And I may well do that, but I will give you that example on one of these trees, and it could well be this one. Because what I want to demonstrate to you is over a couple of years, just what a difference that makes. Because all the energy of the tree will then be going one direction only. So what else can we do here? Well, we look at this, if we're going to keep this in its existing size and let it, so basically year by year, it sort of grows in proportion to the rest of it, it will eventually thicken, it really will, after 10, 15, 20 years. Got to eat a lot of Weetabix to make sure I'm around for that. Now there is a problem that you'll face if I decide to take the option to cut that all down. It's relatively quite an old tree. That is a massive trunk chop. And what's the thing we have to consider when we do trunk chops or big branch cuts? Wound healing. It isn't going to do any wound healing this time of Christmas, so we'll be looking at going through into the spring to do that wound healing. Doesn't mean I can't cut it, but it just means that I need to make sure I seal the wound properly. But I also have to be aware that potentially this tree is going to always end up having a big scar here. And they're the sort of things you think about. But the more I look at it and think, I actually don't like that very much. So I could be thinking like up here, far too long there. So I already know.
Viewer discretion advised.
And I'm going to work my way down. So I'd probably cut that as well. I don't like this branch there. So we look at that, we've got a little growth there, get rid of that. So what I'm doing is just systematically working my way around and going, reducing it until I get to the point where I go, this is the base level of what I've got for my shape. I've got here, far out on the tree, if you look, we've got buds here and here. We could actually, if you're looking really close, right back there's a little bud there, and there, and there. We don't want this to be the point that stuff grows out from. So I already know whatever I'm going to do eventually, I can cut all the way back to there to try and simulate that growth. Now I don't want two coming out. I actually like the angle of that one better than the angle of this one. So I'd remove that one. We look here, if we're going to have this short internode distance here, then we really don't want that great big lump of a branch up there. So this is already telling me potentially I've got a problem. And again, I look here, big long internode, bigger internode, so already I'd be cutting back to here. That will stimulate buds from right into that junction. But that means this is the wrong sort of scale for the rest of it. So you see, you eventually cut further and further and back. And then I go, do I really like that long bit there in comparison to the scale of the rest of the tree? And the answer is no. I could actually cut it right back to there, and that will promote budding from here. And you see, through this process of slowly pulling it back, you're able to make a bigger decision. Now, I know there's probably a load of you going, why are you doing that? Why are you cutting so much back? It's because secret, I've looked at it and already gone, don't really like even this long extent here. And sometimes that just comes down to personal preference. So I already actually know that I'm going to follow the route here, and I'm going to cut it all the way back.
That's impossible!
And then follow this as the new line and let it develop. Big cut, here we go. And it's gone. Could I have waited till next year and do a little air layer? Of course I could. I could have even done it next spring and then planted that straight into some soil. So we've got this big wound here. What I'm actually going to use are these rounded ones that take a chunk inside. Just take it there. And then all I need to do is make sure that's sealed. And I'm using some of Adam of Notion Bonsai's cut paste, or his cut putty. And there we go. Now, I don't know about you, but long term, I find that much more elegant and defined. And I also think to myself, I can see the person who's done this has an idea for a tree. But it does mean that I can now actually let this stuff up here grow right out. That's going to thicken all this part of the trunk. I will get another bud out there, but it'll be much smaller and something I can control. So is there anything else I need to prune? Well, let's deal with another question, shall we? Could I have potentially cut this up here, maybe, cut this back and allow this to heal and then to die back to about here, and then over successive years clear it up, clean it up, so that hopefully we get better healing? And the answer to that is yes, and certainly yellow growing bonsai are a big proponent of doing slow cutbacks. But for the size of the tree, it's only a pencil thickness. I don't see the advantage that. I'm quite happy that a nice seal with cut paste, it will allow that to heal over, and I will slowly reopen it and do the wound healing on that, which you'll see over the next few years. So I've made that decision. Could I go further? Well, the answer is yes. I'm seriously looking at it and going, do I actually go so far as to remove this whole branch up here? Remove all this and then grow this one up here. Cut this back so that basically we just have these two growing as the new leaders. What's that going to give me? It's going to give me loads of really great taper, which if we're trying to do a traditional bonsai, that's what we want. Am I ready to take that decision? Well, I don't know. I actually quite like what I've got there, so I don't need to rush it at the moment, because all the growth is going to be up here. It's going to give me all the thickness I want down there. Some of these do need to be cut back, so I want to get budding from these junctions down here. A little bit of cut paste on the ends. So that's as far as I'm going to go with that, and trust me, it's going to benefit for that work. Painful that it was removing all those lovely branches. No, changed my mind. Let's just regrow it all. That movement. So it's just growing from 2 points. Go on then, hands up, big hands in the air. Who knew that was eventually going to happen? Because I tell you now, I didn't. In fact, when I brought this up to begin with, I had no idea I was going to go that far. But I'm glad I have. That will benefit over the next few years, and you'll see it benefit too if you keep watching the channel. So I'm going to put this down the bottom of the garden. I've got loads more like this to look at. Obviously, clearly something I do need to do is to get all the leaf matter off. They've all had rocks that are trying to keep them supported as they've been growing. Well, that's in nicely, so the birds are certainly not going to be pulling that out. So I'm going to clear all that out, make sure I've got moss and weeds out, and I'm going to follow exactly the same process with this, because those leaves are just coming off like that. And I will use the same rationale. And here we've got the classic, I say that, why do I always say, I love saying the classic. We've got the Y slingshot. I don't like the slingshot unless I'm going to be doing a broom style. So probably I'll be looking to do a similar thing. I can follow a line up there, up there, up there, which means I'm going to take that off right there.
I can't watch this again.
And do that. We won't want that one under there, or that one there. We don't need these great expanses up here. Definitely at the moment we don't need those or those, or those. This horrible great hunky bit there, we'll get rid of that. Same there. We start looking at it there, and now perspective wise we've got a thicker trunk, tapering, and then we've got to try and establish the difference. There's already a problem I think here. This is quite a long length, and then that is pretty well the same thickness. Not all I can do about that right now apart from cutting it right back here, but I won't, because I'm going to get a branch up here anyway. So we've got this stuff here. I quite like this up to there, up to there. So I'm just going to cut that one back a little bit further, cut that one back. This, it's a different thickness to that, so I'm happy to leave that for now. Let's just cut those back. And I should have done that 6 years ago. Now I've actually got a couple of trees that you saw me put together in spring. There was a great lava rock which you saw me doing, and I think we need to go and revisit that. But before we do, I've got a treat for you, because Jason Hanrahan of the Bonsai Garden does so many things, but one of the things he does really well is haiku poetry. And I've read a few of his poems, and do you know what? While you're enjoying the calm and tranquility of the seals and waves of Orkney, where I recently had a retreat, let's hear some of Jason's haiku. And if you want to know where you can get this book, link will be in the description. It's an Amazon link. I'm not an affiliate. He doesn't give me hundreds of pounds for saying this, but he's a good bloke and he's been really good to me. Haiku Dreams. Thank you again for this lovely present. Miniature trees contorted by hand and wire. Natural beauty. The art of bonsai, turning a twig into a twee. Twee, by the way, is a Britishism, and it's excessively or affectedly quaint, pretty or sentimental. Twee is also when you've got twee of them. Rows of tiny trees, a forest in my garden, in ceramic pots. Lost in the forest, amid bare trunks I wander, my zen place of calm. Wintry paradise, this garden created with love, snow, bonsai and koi. As we get into the depths of winter, perhaps this is more apt. Amid frozen trees, I sit, breathe and contemplate the nature of truth. Now this is my lava rock and slate Japanese maple planting. I did it in March this year, and in fact there's a series of videos that relate to how I actually constructed using it's fireside lava rock glued together and onto slate that came from Orkney with the permission of His Majesty. And there's also a centerpiece for my daughter's wedding. A couple of really good videos about that, which I do urge you to see. There'll be a link in the description. In fact, we'll show that at the end. But certainly for many of you who've joined my channel over the last 6 months, you won't have seen the work that went into this, and this is pretty decent. So I'm going to be applying the same pruning techniques to it. And I think it's absolutely incredible the way this has developed and grown, and it's definitely established itself as a new forest planting. And it wasn't difficult to do, it really wasn't. I know some of you don't like me putting my little plastic animals and stuff in there, but hey, that's me and my bonsai. Pruning this is absolutely easy. Anything where you already know the maximum height of your tree you're planting means it's straightforward. It's never going to be any taller than this. All I'm trying to do now is develop ramification over time. The thickness of the trees will relatively grow in proportion to each other, but I'm not trying to develop or grow anything on per se. It's just now about developing that branching. So I'm going to be cutting everything right back, right at the top. We've got this big long internode, don't want any of that, so I'm going to take it all the way back. And look at it, clean up stub areas here. We've got two little buds at the top there, so we're going to cut to them. This great long one, far too long, we don't want that, cut that back. And in fact, ask ourselves the question, we've got 1, 2, 3, do we actually want this big one here? And the answer's no, so we'll get rid of it. We've also got little buds here, we're going to get rid of those. And I'm systematically going to go around and make sure that our junctions just have 2 branches coming from them, and they have either just the buds that I want, or they're at the proportionate size and branch thickness that I want. Because even here, we've actually got 1, 2, 3. That's a nice thin one, that's a thicker one. And I have to look at it in comparison to the rest of that and say which one would be better. In this case, the thicker one's better because this one is actually over the bottom one, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And I'm going to go around and do that with all of this. Well, there it is, it's all cleaned up, and in fact we've got ourselves a little fly or bee on there. Again, subjective, so I've cut back to different little points that I want, but ultimately what we're looking at is I will need to eventually bring this one back more, and I could actually cut some of these right back, but that's something I'll do over the coming years. I may actually do it in spring, so I'm happy with that. It's cleaned, I've taken all the horrible leaves and rubbish like that off the surface, and again just had a look around the base of the trees here just to see whether we've got algae or mildew or anything like that, potentially rotting trunks, because whenever we do anything that's got moss in it and everything, we've got to be very, very aware of potential harm we can do to the base of the tree, and we certainly don't want these rotting. Okay, well, before I keep on going with this, I think this might actually be a shoujo maple. Horrible ugly wound that needs to be healed. I'll do that next year in 2025. I'm going to be pruning all this back exactly the same way. In fact, I'll be doing this to the next 30 or 40 Japanese maples I've got.
Terribly tired. I need to go to bed.
I'm not going to make you endure all of that. Instead, I'm going to say thanks very much for taking the time to look. This time of the year, this sort of deciduous work, and although it's maple, it applies to pretty well everything that's deciduous and the leaves are starting to drop. It's a nice relaxing time, put your earplugs in, think about life, think about ways to keep yourself smiling, think about ways to enjoy the family, just generally getting up and being happy. It's a lovely time. You see these things in their bareness, in their nakedness. Anyway, I've had a great time. Hope you've got something out of this. This is my little go at Japanese maple when the leaves drop. Apart from that, if you want to see the construction of this, then hey, that's the video you really need to be watching. Apart from that, happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.